But what is happening in terms of looking at statistics and research around hunger in South Africa. All right. A new national study by FoodForward SA and UCT's Saldru have basically revealed a deepening hunger crisis in South Africa. Rising prices, unemployment issues like a stagnant economy as we see it are pushing millions into desperate coping mechanisms. So, from cutting portions to skipping meals is what we are seeing happening in many households. And we are talking here about nearly 16 million people who now face inadequate or severely inadequate access to food, with the Western Cape, or rather the Eastern Cape, I beg your pardon, being the hardest hit at this time. Female headed households also carry a heavy load when we look at this. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about FoodForward SA and their work in this particular case. Bobbie Jacobs is the Fund Development Manager at FoodForward South Africa to help you and I unpack these findings as I'd detail them. Bobbie, welcome to Planting the Seed. Welcome to Channel Africa. Pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Mehmet Sekol, and thank you for having me on the show. Thank you for the opportunity
Thank
for
you.
us to be able to discuss our work and this very, very serious issue.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think perhaps that is a good place to start, Bobbie. Talk to us about the work of Food Forward SA.
So, Food Forward SA is the only registered food bank in South Africa, and we are the largest registered food bank on the continent. We basically rescue surplus food from within the food supply chain. So farmers, agri-processors, food manufacturers, and retailers throughout the supply chain, we find and rescue surplus food and we redistribute that food through our warehouses in South Africa to vulnerable communities who need food.
Okay, okay. Let's talk about the study. You got together with the University of Cape Town to really look into matters of hunger, which is very important. I think we're all looking at what is happening between now and the year 2030 as we strive for zero hunger. And hopefully we get there before 2030. But what was the single most urgent insight from the study?
So the urgent insight from the study is that hunger is deepening and that the crisis is getting worse, not better in the short term. That people in already poor communities, already vulnerable communities, such as the Eastern Cape, such as the Northwest Province, Limpopo, etc., are now experiencing the intensity of hunger to the point where they're selling assets in order to make ends meet.
Mm,
They're going into debt, sort of high interest debt to
mm,
just buy food.
mm.
So, yeah, within the short term, at the very least, the hunger crisis sort of started with COVID and has slowly sort of kept with us through our slow economic growth is definitely worsening.
Right. Are you able to just give us insight as to why the Eastern Cape is at the top of well, as the epicenter, I guess, of food insecurity at this time?
Sure. So I think there are multiple failures at multiple levels
Hmm.
within the Eastern Cape. So it's already vulnerable. It's already suffering from a burden of, failures at local government, at provincial government. It's already failing or failing to support its citizens in a number of ways. And so when issues around lack of access to food, or lack of access to nutritious food, or when electricity prices increase, when other things increase, then suddenly food becomes unaffordable and the burden is borne by the poorest of the poor.
Right. Okay. I mean, we're going to talk about just your role as Food Forward SA, how it actually works, with your networks, because I would imagine, I think similar to our good friends that we're going to talk about talk to rather at one. there is a big relationship between the work that you're doing with logistics and your relationships with agro processors, as you'd mentioned, and farmers and restaurants, etc. So we'll get into that, but talk to us about the fact that there are female-led and youth-led households that are the hardest hit. Just some of the factors that are driving this particular vulnerability. You mentioned the economic downturn in the country, but what are the other perhaps social issues that we are dealing with at the moment?
So again, I believe that, I mean, there is probably a lot that can be done at a systemic level, and there are interventions that I think government should be thinking about
Mm.
or implementing to alleviate these particular vulnerabilities. But these exist because of a number of factors. So, I mean, we know we have high youth unemployment. We know we have child or youth-headed households.
Mm.
We know that with the cut of funding to NGOs, with the USAID cuts, we have a lot less social support and a lot less community support available within poor and vulnerable communities. So all of these factors build and make youth-headed households, households that are, female-led, already vulnerable households, even more vulnerable and susceptible to price increases, to increasing increasing utility prices. So all of these little shocks add up, and basically the burden then falls on these households.
All right. If you've just started listening, thank you for tuning in. You are with Channel Africa, Planting the Seed, and we are speaking to Bobbie Jacobs, and she represents Food Forward South Africa. And we're looking at some very revealing data around hunger statistics here in South Africa. Bobbie, let's talk about these stats. Food Forward South Africa, how are you going to be using this particular data and information to shift or to strengthen your strategy going forward?
So yeah, I mean, the reason we undertook the study with
Mm.
Saldru was because while we suspected that there was this deepening crisis within our communities at a household level, we wanted to find out for sure. And so the study was quite extensive. Over 750 households were surveyed. Plus, we had a focus group with Saldru and community members. And so we needed to really understand what was impacting people at a household level.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very, very clear that, people are resorting to ever more desperate coping mechanisms, from meal stretching to, now getting store credit, high cost credit, selling assets. Worst that we heard was people are now foregoing medications. So people who are on ARV treatments, people who are on TB treatments are now foregoing their medication because they don't have access to food.
Mm. Right.
And then, within the grant cycle and the seasonal job gaps, we're finding that, people who are within the social security net, their money only lasts maybe for 2, maybe 3 weeks into the month. And then for the last 2 weeks of the month, they're essentially scraping, trying to figure out different ways, begging, part-time work, borrowing, just to get 1 or 2 meals in that week to get them through the week to their next grant payday.
Hmm. I mean, this is devastating. And, as I'm hearing you speak, I mean, this is a problem that just, it sounds bigger than um, ordinary people, and I think that what you're mentioning is very important around rallying everyone from the top to really assist from the top up, as it were. But let's talk about just Food Forward SA, I beg your pardon, and the work that you're going to be doing between now and the year 2030, which is not as far as we think it is. How do you plan to roll
Absolutely.
out structures to really assist and to, I guess, grow your network? Because I think the more hands, the more resources at a top level, the better. Hey.
Absolutely. And
Mm.
so one of the places that we need to start is that one of the most interesting things, given this devastating hunger, given that 17.8 million people are food insecure in this country is that we are
Yeah.
not classified by the UN Food and Agricultural Union as a secure country. We produce
Mm,
enough food in our country to feed all our citizens.
mm.
And every single year, 10 million tons of food goes to waste. So I think that people need to start taking, with people within the supply chain,
Mm.
food actors within the supply chain, which includes government, which includes manufacturers,
Right.
retailers, food producers, need to start seriously considering what they're doing with the excess or surplus food that within their structures
Mm.
and why they're not donating that food.
Why are we not donating the food? I really just cannot wrap my mind around that. I mean, the economics of it is giving us a different story, but what we're seeing on the ground is completely different, which is so, so sad. But lastly, before I let you go, Bobbie, let's talk about, I guess, the work of ordinary South Africans all over, perhaps businesses. How can people just rally support, and I think particularly for the work around the work of Food Forward SA, how can we all support the work that you are doing, whether it's at a volunteer level or contributing with resources, and how far will that take the organization and its mission?
Sure. So I think there are several ways in which people, businesses, individuals, communities can get involved.
Mm.
So in the short term, there is kind of measures that we put in place. Part of it is our festive food box campaign that we're running at the moment. You can go to
Right.
foodforwardsa.org, click on donate, and for 500 Rand, you can feed a family of four for the festive season.
Mm.
We're currently taking some volunteers in November to come help us pack food boxes so that they get distributed in early December, and hopefully through December and January, there'll be fewer families going hungry this festive season. Then, at a kind of policy and advocacy level,
Mm-hmm.
we are working with the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa and South African Bureau of Standards to bring out a national standard for food donations, which we hope will eventually become the groundwork for a food donations policy. There is room for legislation, like there has been in other countries, to ban organic waste to landfill. They've done it in France, they've done it in other countries, the Good Samaritan law, the complete ban of organic waste to landfill, so that food manufacturers, agri-processors are forced to donate their surplus food into
Mm.
the system, and so that we can then redistribute that food to people who need it most.
Right, right. Okay, very important. Foodforwardsa.org. Okay, should you wish to get more information, perhaps also just acquaint yourself with the food banking model as put together, of course, by Food Forward SA. You can sign up. There's a volunteer form on there and take action. Let's all take action. In fact, I'm signing up to be a volunteer for this festive season, and I encourage you to do the same if you are tuning in from the South African region. Bobbie, thank you very much. I think you and I have to have a part two and really look at the policies around the policies as you mentioned them. I think there's a lot of good knowledge there that we can share in terms of what those structures can look like and how they can filter through to the ordinary South African. Thank you once again for the time this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me.